Welcome to the Women's Money Wisdom Podcast. I'm Melissa Joy, a certified financial planner and the founder of Pearl Planning. My goal is to help you streamline and organize your finances, navigate big money decisions with confidence, and be strategic in order to grow your wealth. As a woman, you work hard for your money, and I'm here to help you make the most of it. Now, let's get into the show. Welcome back to the Women's Money Wisdom Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking all about high functioning leaders and how to combat and control or get ahead of burnout. And we have a fantastic expert who is here to share her wisdom and what she's learned in coaching women executives on exactly this thing. Molly Rosen is a co-founder and co-CEO of Project Next Leadership, where she works with senior executives at companies like Pixar, Airbnb, DocuSign, and Samsung on leadership transitions and team development. After more than 2 decades coaching high-performing leaders, she hit a wall herself and took a sabbatical that stretched from 1 year to 6 years, a period that led her to co-edit Knowing Pains: Women on Love, Sex, and Work in Our 40s. Featured on the Today Show, and ultimately she built a company that she runs today. Molly, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Melissa. Good to be here.
So you are running a company that provides leadership and consulting for executives, men and women,
Yes.
who, just need that insight on how to manage it all, how to integrate, a job that's probably all consuming as well as life, and just how to make it all work. How did you get into this, kind of life and role? How did you learn to lead leaders?
Yeah, great question. Well, Melissa, I've been in this field really my entire career. So I actually started working in Eastern Europe back in the day when Gorbachev was in power, Soviet Union still existed, et cetera. So that was my early career. I did a lot of work getting to know women over in the Soviet Union, in Prague, Poland, and what was going on there. So I've always had a particular passion around women, what's changing in our lives, how do we balance it all, et cetera. When I moved back to the States after getting a business degree, I just realized that what I loved was work around culture, around careers, around how people interacted at work, and how challenging
Mm.
that can be, especially when we come from different places. So, as I said, I've been in this, as you mentioned, for about 20 years, and started Project Next Leadership with my business partner about 6 years ago, where we are hired by large companies, like companies that you've mentioned, to work with their leaders and their teams, to work with leaders individually, to work with them in cohort. And so a lot of it is around performance. It's how do you prepare for that next level of leadership? Because usually we don't know what it's going to be like until we get to that director level, VP level, and there are challenges that no one really told us about. And some of that is, how do I balance life with these challenges, especially in this day and age? So that ends up happening behind the scenes, but the companies hire us very much around performance.
Well, it occurs to me as well, having been from a different perspective coaching corporate employees, that what works in one regime of leadership, one, kind of generation of employees to the dynamics may change quickly or over time, where, kind of the equation for success and navigating and managing your performance within it is differing and changes. It makes me think of a conversation I had just today with someone who's, just kind of the old guard is walking out the door, and there's newer regimes with different, whether it's allegiances or experiences. So many different interesting considerations in the work that you do, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, with the number of generations in the workplace, so you've got that, and stereotypically different expectations around what is work. Do you manage your life around your work? Do you manage your work around your life? Right. This is stereotypically, I'm generalizing, different in some of these different generations, but also at
Mhm.
times in our life. right? When we're starting early career or perhaps when we're raising a family and we're balancing that. And it's true that women on average still do twice as much as at home as men do if they're, if they're in a relationship with a man,
Mm.
tends to be the case. And for me, I've got a couple kids in their 20s who are launched. So I'm in a very different time in my career, which is why this is such a big focus of my life right now. So, we have these different chapters, the stages of life. We have different generations in the workplace. So I don't want to make any sweeping generalizations about what's needed for different people, but we're people. We're bringing all of ourselves to work, whether we're doing it consciously or unconsciously, um, clearly or not clearly. We are. We're still bringing ourselves, and so that's the challenge. At work.
So, so true. If we can step back from that kind of coaching perspective for a moment, I'd love to explore and then integrate into the conversation your own respite from work, your own story of taking a year and then extending it. Um, do you mind sharing your, kind of personal narrative of where you were and what you did?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Let's see. So I was in a point of my career that things were going well. Things were going really well. And I was the regional VP of a consulting firm. I was traveling a lot. I was traveling, actually, I realized at one point on an airplane, like, why am I so tired? And I realized I was traveling every other week on a plane.
New
I
time zone every week, huh?
Oh, 100%. And I had a daughter who was in kindergarten and a son who was 4 years older, and my son was sort of used to it. My daughter was not used to it, and, at that point, she was crying when I left,
Mhm.
and it's just that's tough, it's tough for any parent, certainly tough for me as a mom, and so between that and all the expectations and then looking around at that point, this executive team that I was on who had great people on it and the company did
Mhm.
really great things. But I looked around and realized, okay, everyone else on this team either is a man with a wife who's not working, children and wife who's not working, or two women who don't have children.
Mhm.
And so I realized, oh, this is why this is feeling like it's feeling right now. And so what it was, so basically I was driving at one point taking that, I think a lot of your listeners will appreciate this, like that, the 5-10 minutes of like, okay, what can I do in this 5 or 10 minutes? I've got a little time. Okay, I can put something in the laundry. I can run to go do an errand. I can, etc. So,
Here's how we're gonna survive the night.
oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I was doing that and I was driving in my car and I would just realize like I was just exhausted. And so I had a brief, I hate to say it, it's embarrassing. A daydream like, what if I got breast cancer? Like, I don't want to die. I just want a break. And how do I get a break? Like the idea
Mm.
of having a few months of, I mean, again, for anyone who has had cancer, I mean, and my husband's had cancer. Like, I mean, I know what this is like, but so it's not a break. I know it's not a break, but it was just this idea of like, I just need to not be working and on, and I need people to not be depending on me the way that they're depending on me right now, whether it's employees or family or what have you. So I realized that's really screwed up. That's
That's a
really,
cry from
really
health
messed up.
from
Yeah, like, what am I
yeah.
doing? So, so I decided I need to take a year off because I couldn't really think how to do it in that job that I was in. And I will say my boss at the time was, was the CEO of the company, and he was not particularly understanding about it. And that was disappointing, but it
Mhm.
is what it is. So I thought I would take a year off. I connected with my husband about that. And as it turned out, I'd been making more money than he had been for a bit, and he was kind of ready to step back on the fast track, and he had a career where he could do that and decided that he wanted to do that. So we decided, okay, let's just switch for a year. And, frankly, we've gone back and forth and switched a number of times where one of us, yeah, we're both working, but one person is working less than they were,
Mhm.
sort of like
Or
having to
there's the
guard
person
them.
who's gonna get the phone call when school needs a kid to be picked up
Exactly.
or something like
Like,
that.
who is the
Mhm.
go-to parent, right? Who's the default parent, as I often
Mhm.
say, get the phone call, figure out the camps, whatever. But sometimes we'll like one of us will throttle back or throttle forward, that kind of thing. So he throttled forward and I actually went completely off for a year. And I realized like I needed a whole year to really just restart my nervous system. I mean, it
Mm.
took longer than I expected. I ended up I'd already been involved with a volunteer project that I'd started because there's nothing I love more than getting a bunch of women together to do something cool together. Like that is like my nirvana. So I'd already started a project that now I had time for. So it was the book that you mentioned, this Knowing Pains, Women Love Sex and Work in Our 40s, which, is a self-published book. We had a great time with it. It was really fun. Um, but I realized I was still moving at this pace. So we did this book really quickly and, got involved with lots of other things. So anyway,
Separation of employment, just fill it up with other obligations that were on the to-do list that you couldn't get to before.
100%.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like I was used to working at a certain pace.
Mhm.
And so I kept working at that pace, but just doing other things. And also, I'm quite achievement oriented. So it was finding different ways to scratch that itch to feel like I was achieving things. So
It's
it
so
just,
interesting to be I share that achievement-oriented default persona.
yeah.
You know, the work that you need to do to get out of or even just recognize like, "Oh, why do I wanna do that?" It's only to scratch that itch, but would that be better for me? Do I have time? And that takes a lot of training, a lot of,
Mhm.
um, insight or maybe hours of therapy in
Yes.
certain cases. So I just share that characteristic and know how, you naturally just keep pushing toward, a way to receive that external, um, acknowledgement.
100%. That external acknowledgement, that sense of I'm learning something new, right?
Mm,
Doing something new. And that did serve me well, though, to be able to get
yeah,
back on later on. So I don't know if you
excellent.
want me to talk about that, but yeah,
Yeah, no, so please share, like, then you at a certain period of time, um, you're staying busy, but not in the traditional 9 to 5 sense or y
well, not
60-hour
being paid,
sense.
let's just call it. Like, so I
Yeah,
wasn't getting
unpaid staying
paid
busy.
anymore. So staying busy, I did a lot of work for the food bank, looking at some solar roofing they were doing. I mean, like all sorts of things that I had no business doing, but sometimes if you're a free set of hands, people they engage you to do stuff. So I learned a lot during a couple of years and I just decided to take a little bit more time off, and I was lucky enough to be able to do that. We'd saved up some money, we had purchased a house, and like I said, my husband kind of went full throttle, and then a couple years in, I decided, I do there were some opportunities because I had stayed in touch with people in my field who were what I call nodes or connectors. Um,
Mm,
knew that I wanted to get back into work, and I do think the way to find interesting work is through people. So I
so
kept in
true.
touch with people, very intentionally, and so they knew what I was doing. They knew when I was, like, starting a new website or I was doing stuff that I thought was interesting, but I just I stayed in touch with them, and I kept learning new things, and so opportunities did come to do some fractional work. And fractional work is a great way back in. So I did some fractional work, and I'll tell you that first job back in was I was way over my head. I
Yeah,
have not, I left the workplace working on the Microsoft, um, series of applications and went back into the whole Google series of applications, of which I was basically supposed to know as I walked in the door. It was a pre-IPO, huge company,
totally different culture.
totally different culture, and I was the person who was supposed to be bringing the experience to be able to know what I was doing, and I, also was just entering menopause.
Mm,
So, I was 48, I was entering menopause, the average age at that company was 28. So I was in meetings getting the hot flashes, and
Mhm.
certainly didn't think I could say anything about it. And it was just, it was humbling. It was really humbling and probably exactly what I needed at the time.
Well, if we could just pause for a moment there, talking about I don't know how you incorporate this in your coaching, but it's very misunderstood, underreported. I know I allude to it a lot in this podcast, but menopause has a big impact, and perimenopause as well, on women's careers, and it especially does if you don't know and understand some of the symptoms. Like, one symptom is the ability to concentrate and focus. Can
Mhm.
be. Like, not everybody's the same, and there's no diagnostic tools. Your doctor is likely not going to be asking you about your menopause symptoms, unless you're coming in saying, I have hot flashes, or I have, joint pain, which they may not, associate with menopause anyway. And so but the economic cost of perimenopause and menopause is high, and it comes with, like, inability to perform, time outside of work. For your personal career, it may be that you were on a high achieving career track, and you either choose or it's chosen for you to get off of that career track. So it's just important for people our listeners who may or may not have experienced menopause yet, but for most women, this will be, something that you experience over time. That you need to be proactive, and it really pays, just like you described, that your family had the flexibility for a variety of reasons, including good planning to begin with, to have choices in terms of where you were with your career and how much you were pushing on the accelerator. It really gives you value in terms of your flexibility, your ability to invest in the medical needs that you have at that stage of your life.
Mhm.
It's something that it sounds like, stop tilting at windmills, the menopause windmill, Melissa, but it is something that is you will benefit from preparing for in almost every case.
Absolutely, 100%. And it was my mom didn't go through it. She had a hysterectomy and,
Mhm.
had passed away a while before anyway, so I did not really have anyone to talk to about it. I went through it before most of my friends did. Certainly wasn't gonna be talking about it at this
At the startup.
startup, that's not happening. And so it was a crazy time. And as you said, just the concentration, the insomnia, and I couldn't tell what was stress of, "Wait a second, I feel like a complete imposter syndrome coming in here after having not been working for pay for 5 or
Mhm.
6 years." I felt like a real imposter syndrome, even though I feel like I did a lot of the right things to be able to get back in,
Mhm.
but it was challenging. But I have to say, the world gives you what you need to learn. So
So true.
that's what I needed to learn. I needed to have these experiences, and now when I do work with women, I've talked to quite a few women who kinda look at me and say, "Wait, you took some time off? Huh?" Like, "That's
I
okay?
didn't see that coming,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, exactly." And it's like, "Yeah, I did, other people can." And as you said, financial planning and being fortunate enough to be able to do that, but then coming back in, I loved it. And if I hadn't taken that time off, there's no way that I would have been starting Project Next Leadership. I don't think I would have had the confidence, the skills, the perspective to do it. And one of the things I love doing most is working with women leaders. And a lot of it is because I relate to what they're having to go through and so much of what we're having to mask as well at work.
So let's talk about that. Like, that's the whole point of the conversation. I wanna make sure we get to the burnout conversation as well.
Mhm.
But when you think about coaching women leaders, and you're great at it because you know it from the inside out, what are some of the things that you automatically, like, some of the bullet points that you go to first in terms of getting to know them and the circumstances and challenges that they're facing?
Yeah. Well, as any good coach will tell you, you're trying to meet them in the moment and what's
Mhm.
happening with them right then. And with, just, thinking one of leaders I worked with early on when we started at Project Next, she was a VP at a tech company. She had 2 kids, one of whom was special needs. She was a very high performer, very skilled, very smart, and, just exhausted, feeling
Mhm.
continually needed to prove herself, cared a lot about her company, but also just trying to figure out, like, how do I keep going, right?
Mhm.
It's never ending. You're just going. So the way that we work together is, I think, starting with what is important to you, right? So just doing the values work around what are you prioritizing. So we had done some of that work. Also, just I think all leaders, regardless of gender, should have a good sense of how people see them, how people experience them. And the one reason I think it's particularly important, again, it's important for all leaders, but for women, our research, because we have a 360 that we use, and so our research shows that, and data shows that for women leaders in general, the self-assessment that women leaders have is lower than other people's assessment of them. Now that's
Mhm.
for every leader, and certainly for a lot of men leaders that it's the same as well. However, overall, women leaders tend to rate themselves lower than other people rate them. So what does that mean? That means that they often, may not raise their hand for things. They may not speak up for things. They may feel like, I just need to keep running harder because no one's going to recognize me if I don't. And, there are other things that we need to think about, which is just working harder doesn't get you that promotion, right? That's not
Mhm.
how it works when you're a leader. How it works is it's about your relationships, it's about the connections, and it's about the needs of the company. So we're talking about all of that. Often we're getting into the stakeholder work. I find it is very common for women leaders to, again, just keep working harder. It's like, this is how I got here because I worked harder than anybody is often the way that women leaders are coming at it. And sometimes, frankly, that's had to be the case,
It
honestly.
is so true, like, so many times that is what gets you from entry level to middle management, but
Director
what
level.
worked once doesn't always sometimes things change in terms of what you're rewarded for, and it's so strategic at those mid management and executive levels in terms of your network, your alliances, your who you're helping, how you're helping. And so, that is much more of a minefield than, I'll just be there more hours or, answer the emails faster and get that project done on the deadline and things like that.
Yeah, 100%. It is much more, as you said, about those relationships, the stakeholders, the, how are you coming across, like, the whole notion around executive presence is a loaded term, particularly for women.
Especially with gender. Yes.
Yep, and, but there's a lot to that one as well, but, some of it is just letting people know that you do wanna move up, but a lot of it is also, are you in the right places at the right time? Are you positioning yourself correctly? Do you have the right sponsors? These are
Mhm.
things that people know that we're often talking about with leaders, but that is why having a good sense of how people see you is so critical because we're bad judges. All of us are bad judges of how other people see us and how we come across. We know how we intend to inside of our own heads, but that's not necessarily how people see us. So those are some of the things that we work on with, frankly, any leader, including women
Makes
leaders.
sense.
But a lot of it is when I'm working with women leaders, I often love working with them as a group so that they can
Mm.
hear from each other, so that they can recognize that they aren't alone in what they're feeling.
Well, and I also think for women leaders that are listening, I know when I have my owner cohort of financial advisors, like they're not in my neighborhood. They're not in the drop off line typically.
Mhm.
They're around the country, but we've met each other at conferences and along the way. But they're so important because you can't always share some of the, business challenges you have that are just way different than who your friends in town, like their day-to-day experiences, and so it's so important to build that, network of peers that can understand from have a perspective that is similar to yours and have similar challenges, and if you're in a male-dominated field, they may not be close to home, and that's okay, but find those people that you can trust to really say how it's going.
Absolutely, absolutely, and listen, I mean, I love that you're in a group like that. I'm in women's presidents organizations, you. And I love my chapter. They're just an amazing, supportive, so skilled, so smart, group of women. And running a company is not the same as being a senior leader in another company. They're both really hard for different reasons.
Totally, and working in a small business versus a corporate environment too is, like, entirely different,
Yeah.
um, pitfalls and opportunities.
Yes, exactly. And so to have others who can, so I typically work with women leaders who are in big companies. So we're
Mhm,
working through that. But for myself, having a group of women who all run businesses and
mhm.
have, just the entrepreneurial terror at night, that is true for pretty much any entrepreneur I've ever met. Just, you know, is this gonna work? Is like, how are we gonna take care of our employees, et cetera, et cetera. That's true for any entrepreneur I've ever met. So these are different issues. And I just think that having that kind of cohort is critical.
So, speaking specifically to burnout, have you found strategies that are most useful to either, like, first of all, like, how do you know if this is burnout versus, depression or just apathy or like not being in the right job? How do you distinguish amongst the various potential, maladies of, feeling
Yeah.
uneased?
I can't say I'm a practitioner, so
Right.
I'm not sure that I can give that. I will say I know it was burnout for me because it was sustained. It
Hmm.
was for over a period of time. There was probably a little depression, anxiety, worked into the mix there. And
And significant. It wasn't, like just like, oh, I hate today. It's like,
no, it was
yeah.
over time. It was a feeling in my body of tension that
Hmm.
would leave. And I think I've come to believe that so much of wisdom is being able to recognize what our body is telling us before our mind can recognize it. And
Hmm.
and at that point, I wasn't paying any attention to my body. It was mind over matter, mind over body.
Hmm.
I can do this because if I don't do this, then what kind of role model am I being for my children? Right. That was part
Hmm.
of it, and others. So it was, yeah, so it was burnout because it was over a period of time, because it
Hmm.
wasn't just a bad day at work, and because it was just sort of never ending. So, the insomnia that we were talking about, it just didn't stop. So,
Right.
I recognized too then after I stopped, like, how long it took for me to physically recover. So that became one of my goals when I stopped, was about just getting healthy again, taking care of my body again. And, frankly, it's a really important part of my life right now, just having that, being able to sustain physically the kind of life that I wanna lead, and to have the energy that I wanna have. But I wasn't doing that before, it was
Mhm.
like, how am I gonna fit that into work and family and everything else? So, I think we all experience different things in different ways, but I think for me, it was just I was driving so hard, and I didn't know how to stop.
So, I'm hearing that even though there's physical manifestations, but burnout can be, like about mindset, about how you feel. But that it's so important to incorporate your physical well being in order to tackle anything else. If you're not taking care of yourself, if you're burning the candle at both ends,
Yeah, yeah.
proverbially, then it's going to be really difficult to tackle the other challenge, like the other things needed to um, deal with or combat burnout.
Yeah, absolutely. It was just exhaustion. And it's one of those things. It's easy to say, it's hard to do, right?
For
I mean,
sure. It
we
takes
all know.
rearranging the schedule, right?
Yeah, we all know we're supposed to eat well. We all know we're supposed to exercise. We all know we're supposed to get more sleep. Nobody needs to be told that. Everybody knows that. So the question is just what what is the impact on your life right now, and what are your options? And it can feel, the more tired and stressed we are, the fewer options it seems like we have,
Mhm.
because our minds just aren't able to have the openness to be able to see that there are other things possible. So we get tunnel vision when we're exhausted. And so I had
And our
tunnel.
time frames are super short too. It's just like, how do I get
Mhm.
through the day and then the week, and then you just wake up and it's a new year, but you haven't really had any moment to appreciate what's happening over time.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a client who uh, basically came to me and we were just working individually together. And she was, very, very successful in her career. She had a couple of young kids. And she said, I'm exhausted and I feel like my life is just moving so quickly without me. And
Mm.
I don't feel like I'm living in my life right now. I feel like my life is living me and it's going so fast. I feel out of control. So, what we started with was just trying to get her to be in the moment. And again, no one needs to be told this. We all have heard these things a million times before. So, how to do that and what is keeping us from recognizing what is here right now? And that is why, it's why people get into meditation. People have different ways to be able to do this, but for her to be able to find her own way to be able to be here now as opposed to being trying to be with the kids, trying to be on her phone, responding to the message from, her manager, trying to keep up with the news. I mean, it's never ending. So, how do we pare down our life in a way that is human sized? Because right now what we have in our life, especially with AI, with everything, all the opportunities and the needs that we seem to have to be able to do more, right? Because we can do more, we should do more. It's not human sized right now. And we need to recognize that our physical bodies haven't changed that much, even though the technology has changed so much. And I'm in Northern California, right? So this is sort of our world as well. It's just we're like epicenter of it. And it can be exhausting, honestly.
Well, the inputs that we receive, I think that's one of the issues, in thinking about how I talk to people about how you take investment information or economy signals, the inputs we receive, you used to listen to the night our parents used to listen to the nightly news
Yeah.
and read a newspaper, which didn't have like attention seeking, click here, click there. It was like in black and white, even unless it was, Sunday. And the amount of information that we just naturally take in, even if you're not on your screens all day, is uh, multiples of, many, many, probably millions of multiples more than what we were taking in 50 years ago or 30 years ago, even. And so that has impact on every level. And every time people say that AI is going to take away our jobs, I was like, great. Like, why don't you take half? Because
Yeah.
it seems to be only cramming in more for many people. So that that is why this conversation is so relevant, not only because our listeners are those mid-career leaders who are looking to take care of themselves and everyone else, but also because of the world we live in.
Yes, well, 100%, and that's a huge part of this context. I think what was helpful for me was asking myself, which I continue to ask myself, "What is it that only I can do?"
Mm.
And
Elevate and delegate, right? Like,
yes, exactly, exactly, because when I work with women, I often hear them, especially when I used to do a lot of career coaching, I would hear them say, "Well, I can do this, and I can do that." And it's like,
mhm.
"I'm not asking you what you can do. I'm asking you what you want to do," which people don't, especially women, don't always, because it's like, "I can do it, so I should do it." It's like, "No,
Right.
what do
That
you
that equation is not working anymore.
no, and what is it that you uniquely can do? So for me, when my kids were young, there were other people who could do certain things for them, like coach them, in sports, which is not my strength anyway, or feed them lunch or what have you. Like it's a great thing to be able to do these things, and if that's what brings someone joy, they should do that 100%. But for me, that wasn't what I uniquely could do with them. Only I could answer their questions as their mother. Only
Mhm.
I could, do certain things. So it was just, I think it's for all of it. It's to ask ourselves, what is it you love doing with your kids, with your friends, with your work, and what is it that perhaps others can do, perhaps better than we can. Now, it doesn't mean that we all don't have parts of our life that we don't love, I mean, that we, that's life. But I ask leaders that all the time, again, any gender, what is it that only you uniquely can do? Because if we just do everything that we can do, or even everything that's most comfortable to do because it's familiar, we just burn ourselves out. We can't do that.
And it has to be, I think, probably for most of the people you're working with and many of our listeners, on the personal or family as well as on the professional, and making space for yourself, even if it seems selfish to you, who realizes your family and work gives so much. And so I love that, like, kind of add, edit, change list of,
Mhm.
or add, subtract, edit list of, like, what am I going to outsource? What am I going to quit doing? Even if, like, that I'm not mom of the year. And what can I, at work ask other people to do, which would probably help them achieve more and do more and also help me.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. It's just, yeah, it's that having that discretion, right? That how do we do that? Yeah. So, anyway, again, things that are easy to say, hard to do. So then, how do we recognize what is getting in our way of doing that? What is it about our pride? What is it about our finances? What are the
Mhm.
reasons? Yeah.
Well, and I would just mention as we're wrapping up, first of all, I could talk about this all day. It's, we both lived it, as well as we know and help others who are doing the same. Um, for those of you listening where this resonates, there's so many different ways, from executive coach to therapist to, programs that are more approachable in terms of cost, that you can kind of tackle some of these burnout conversations, or just career conversations in general. And also, don't let the boundaries of your financial planning engagements stop with your investment accounts, because these are absolutely relevant discussions to have, if you're working with a financial planner who can see, um, outside of your accounts. Talking about, like, I don't know how long I want to work in this position. I may want to look for a different job, or I may want a sabbatical. That absolutely is something that you can figure out whether it's doable through conversations with, investment professionals and financial planners or wealth managers. So do know that there's help out there, and hopefully we've inspired some healthy conversations, both, like, between two ears as well as with others.
Yeah. Love that. Thanks, Melissa.
Molly, where can people find more about you and the work that you do?
Yeah, we're at projectnextleadership.com. And again, I'm at Molly at projectnextleadership.com. So would love to hear from your folks.
Molly, thanks so much for the discussion. We loved having you.
Thanks, Melissa. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Women's Money Wisdom podcast. If you found value in this episode, the best way that you can support the podcast is to forward an episode to a friend or leave a review. Go to proplan.com and the podcast link to get all the resources and links mentioned. This presentation by Pearl Planning is intended for general information purposes only. No portion of this presentation serves as the receipt of or a substitute for personal investment advice from Pearl Planning or any other investment professional of your choosing. Copies of Pearl Planning's current written disclosure brochure and Form CRS discussing our advisory services and fees are available upon request or on our website platform at pearlplan.com. The information that we share is meant to educate and inspire, not serve as personalized financial advice. Everyone's situation is unique, so be sure to consult with your own financial professional for guidance that fits your life. And just so you know, the opinions shared in this podcast are Melissa's own and those of her guests. They don't necessarily represent any organizations with which Melissa is affiliated. For more important disclosures, please go to our webpage at pearlplan.com.